campaign. There were high-level DNC emails that detailed evidence of Hillary's, quote, psycho-emotional problems, uncontrolled fits of anger, aggression, and cheerfulness, and that then Secretary Clinton was allegedly on a daily regimen of heavy tranquilizers. Then CIA Director Brennan and the intelligence community mischaracterized intelligence and relied on dubious substandard sources to create a contrived false narrative that Putin developed a quote-unquote clear preference for Trump.
So the opposite was true. He didn't care at all. They invaded under Biden. They were never afraid of Democrats. Here, new evidence uncovers Obama-directed creation of false intelligence reports used to launch years-long coup to undermine President Trump, the American people. It has all the information here about Brennan. John Brennan is mentioned 13 or 12 different times here. That he lied, that he mischaracterized and misled lawmakers, mischaracterized intelligence. But Brennan did so at the behest of Hillary Clinton. Let's continue. They did so because they wanted to ruin President Trump's administration with a hoax. There was never any evidence at all. Pointing to intelligence reports is meaningless when today the intelligence chiefs, Tulsi Gabbard, Kash Patel, John Ratcliffe, they're all stating that their predecessors were not only partisan but criminal. And so if your argument is predicated upon an appeal to authority, and the individuals in authority actually committed crimes, and now we're finding out those crimes, there goes your argument.
Brennan and the IC misled lawmakers by referencing the debunked Steele dossier to assess, quote-unquote, Russia's plans and intentions, falsely suggesting that this dossier had intelligence value when he knew that it was discredited. The intelligence community excluded significant intelligence and ignored or selectively quoted reliable intelligence that contradicted the intelligence community assessment's key findings on Putin's alleged support for Trump. Including this intelligence reporting would have exposed the ICA's claim as implausible, if not ridiculous. The intelligence community assessment omitted reliably sourced information, such as how some Russian intelligence officials were, quote-unquote, planning for candidate Hillary Clinton's victory, while others assessed neither Trump nor Clinton would respect Russia's interests. As was reflected in the ODNI documents that we released on Friday, multiple intelligence community assessments released in the months leading up to the November 2016 election concluded that Russia had neither the intent nor capability to impact the outcome of the U.S. election. On December 5th of 2016, the FBI and ODNI gave the House Intelligence Committee its first post-election classified briefing, in which there was no mention of Putin aspiring to elect Trump by either agency. The Presidential Daily Brief, drafted on December 8th of 2016, stated that no Russian or criminal actors impacted vote counts. This document was pulled just hours before it was to be published due to quote-unquote new guidance.
How could anyone interfere when not one vote was altered? Okay, not one vote was altered. So when Trump said, hey, how did I lose to a man in 2020? According to President Trump and the world, how did he lose to this man who couldn't communicate and less than 4 years later was kicked out of the candidacy by George Clooney and Hollywood and media and Democrats themselves? He won his primary. But the rebuttal was, oh, no votes were altered. No votes from Trump were removed, or no votes for Biden were tampered with or added. And so the rebuttal was, well, how can you prove anything? Well, what could you prove in 2016? It's like gospel for morally superior Democrats. Russia interfered. Well, how? Not one vote was altered. So that's the hilarious thing about all of this, in addition to the fact that Clinton wanted Trump. The WikiLeaks DNC emails or the campaign emails show that they wanted to elevate Trump. So they went from the same. So what happened? Clinton and the Russians had the same idea to elevate Trump. The whole thing was completely absurd, but they needed a scapegoat. And people committed crimes, ladies and gentlemen. That's the point. Clinton, after Brennan, will eventually be indicted, likely within the year or 6 months.
If it had been published, it would have been briefed to both President Obama and President-elect Donald Trump.
You pay thousands in rent.
December 9th, 2016, a National Security Council meeting was called to gather President Obama's senior national security officials, which included CIA Director Brennan, then Obama DNI James Clapper, Susan Rice, and others. Following that secret meeting, DNI Clapper's assistant sent an email to the intelligence community with the subject line, POTUS tasking on Russia election meddling, tasking ODNI leaders to create a new assessment per the president's request. The House Intelligence Committee Oversight Report that we released today reveals that, quote, unlike routine intelligence community analysis, the intelligence community assessment was a high-profile product ordered by the president, President Obama. It directed senior intelligence community agency heads and created an intelligence community assessment limited to just 5 analysts, using one principal drafter. This is not something that occurs in the normal path of producing an intelligence community assessment that reflects the views across the intelligence community.
And there are numerous whistleblowers. There's declassified documents upcoming. There's already been declassified documents from the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, and the Clinton Annex from the Durham probe that Chuck Grassley declassified, and Senate Republicans. And the dossier itself was a criminal act. It was a crime to purchase a dossier with the intent to filter it through the United States government and set up your direct political rival. That's a crime. That is numerous legal statutes, 18 U.S. Code 371, but they did so legally. Okay, the rebuttal is, well, there was no crime. Everything was done legally. Yeah, Bernie Madoff, with the billions of dollars in Ponzi schemes, every stock transaction, every stock sale, every short, every option trade was done legally. They didn't get Bernie Madoff on illegal option trades. They got him on a Ponzi scheme. They're not going to. So if Brennan and Comey and Clinton and all these people say, well, everything we did was legal. It was bureaucracy. Yeah, everything that Bernie Madoff did was legal, except the Ponzi scheme. He traded stocks, he traded mutual funds, he traded options, he took money, he put money in accounts, all of it legally, except what he did in aggregate was not only illegal, one of the greatest financial crimes of all time.
The production of this intelligence community assessment was subject to unusual directives directly from the president and senior political appointees, especially the former director of the CIA, John Brennan. The House Intelligence Committee Oversight Report also shows how later that same day, on December 9th, Brennan ordered the publication of quote-unquote substandard reporting on Russian activities, which had previously been withheld from publication of prior assessments because the information was judged, quote, to have not met long-standing publication standards. Some of the information later used in the Obama-ordered assessment over the objections of veteran CIA officers was quote-unquote unclear or from unknown sources. The Intelligence Committee's oversight report reveals that CIA Director Brennan overruled senior CIA officers who challenged the Obama-ordered intelligence assessment, stating, quote, we don't have direct information that Putin wanted to get Trump elected. Yet, the Obama-directed assessment was published on January 6, 2017, which explicitly stated, quote, we assess Putin and the Russian government aspired to help President-elect Trump's election chances, when possible, by discrediting Secretary Clinton and publicly contrasting her unfavorably to him.
The DNC emails showed that Bernie Sanders was cheated. Hunter's laptop showed that there was almost certainly bribery and graft. The Clinton campaign email showed they wanted to elevate Trump, literally the same thing they accused Russia of doing. Every single time modern-day Democrats type something, you can see what's happening in Virginia. They can't even text. What's his name? Wanted to text something terrible. I don't want to bring it up for the algorithm right now. But when you actually, that's why they spied on Trump, because they're like, oh my God, if anyone spied on us, they'd find so much criminality. So we're going to spy on Trump. No doubt he's just as criminal as we are. And of course, they found nothing. But they can't even type emails without grandiose scandals. That's why they have servers. Why did Clinton have servers? I wrote about this endlessly. Because obviously, donors in the Clinton Foundation. It's not rocket science. That's why you would have servers, secret servers. Now, how did Hillary Clinton and her team, mainly how did her team, because she could always say, I didn't know what was going on. How did her team, of course she did, but how did her team transfer top secret intelligence onto servers? It is impossible. There's not one cybersecurity expert, there's not one tech person on the planet today that can explain how it was done. Nobody can. Nobody can explain how top secret intelligence from U.S. government servers was transferred onto Clinton's BlackBerry phone in 2010. It's impossible to do from a cybersecurity perspective. And then you have James Comey stating that Uma Abedin, he testified under oath that Uma Abedin was forwarding classified data to Anthony Weiner. That's why he wrote the letter. I mean, there's so much criminality, and then they go after Trump, who had the power to declassify. Trump had the power to declassify. You can't accuse a president. Let's say a president has classified data. It's impossible to accuse him of doing anything illegal because he could have verbally declassified it without any record. But anyway, let's continue.
End of quote. The CIA and FBI, then led by John Brennan and James Comey, expressed high confidence in this politically motivated manufactured document. He directed senior CIA officials to use it anyway. CIA officer told the House Intelligence Committee staff as they investigated this, quote, the director of the CIA, John Brennan, refused to remove it, and when confronted with the dossier's many flaws, responded, quote, yes, but doesn't it ring true? Even the bipartisan Senate Select Committee on Intelligence report published in 2020 criticized the FBI's handling of the Steele dossier, noting its completely unverified nature and purposeful sidestepping of intelligence community procedures in its use. Now, President Obama, Hillary Clinton, John Brennan, James Clapper, James Comey, and others, including their mouthpieces in the media, knowingly lied as they repeated the contrived narrative that was created in this January 2017 intelligence community assessment with high confidence as though it were fact. John Brennan, as CIA director, stated in a memo to his agency staff in December of 2016, saying, quote, there is strong consensus among us on the scope, nature, and intent of Russian interference in our presidential election. This was reported by NBC News, confirming that Brennan, along with James Clapper and James Comey, agreed with the CIA's assessment that Russia intervened to help Trump win the presidency. As Obama's director of national intelligence, James Clapper was tasked with overseeing the creation of this assessment in January of 2017 by President Obama, and he expressed confidence in its findings. In a 2018 interview with the Harvard Gazette, he talked about how he provided Trump with the same classified assessment that President Obama received, which included the high confidence judgment that Putin directly ordered the hacking and election interference. Clapper then went on to add, I think they, the Russians, actually influenced the outcome. This is a brief summary of the details that you'll find within the House Majority Staff's report in their investigation into the Obama-directed January 2017 Intelligence Community Assessment that leads us to the very same conclusion that we announced in the release of our documents on Friday. The implications of this are far-reaching and have to do with the integrity of our democratic republic.
Obama's been caught directly. So people say, oh, you know, a group. It's not a group. It's Obama. His orders are on the paper. The papers are signed. The papers came right out of their office. They sent everything to be highly classified. Well, the highly classified's been released, and what they did in 2016 and in 2020 is very criminal.
So President Trump wrote The Art of the Deal. He is friends with President Obama. They're on different teams, but they're both American presidents, and there's only 47 of them. Number one, I do think President Obama is helping President Trump because he circumvents any criminal liability and he takes over the Democratic Party once Madam Secretary is indicted. So that's almost certain. I know that people think I'm crazy or nuts, and that's not happening. Clinton will be indicted. She'll run for president again. She'll almost certainly be convicted in a court of law, okay, when it gets to trial. But she'll still run for president. And do you think that look at, I mean, we've played the clip. Look at President Trump and President Obama at Jimmy Carter's funeral. They're friends. This is called The Art of the Deal. He's negotiating. He's like, okay, you face criminal liability. We're part of the same club. Help me out. Okay, I think that President Trump knows very well that he can gain a great deal more from President Obama not indicted, because there's no way he's going to indict President Obama for a number of reasons. But not indicted, he gets all the information on Brennan, Comey, Clapper, all of them. And President Obama knows that that President Trump is of far greater use and benefit to him if he helps him. Because number one, he takes, like I said, he circumvents any criminal liability, being the president when all this criminal activity took place, setting up and framing an incoming candidate. That's not a peaceful transfer of power. And then he takes over the Democratic Party completely. The I'm with her crowd will be defending endless indictments. So anyway, you heard my belief. It's not a conspiracy theory, but I'm not saying it's definitely happening. Okay, it's speculation.
It's criminal at the highest level.
President Trump today calling out former President Obama after DNI Tulsi Gabbard sent a criminal referral to the DOJ related to her claims that Obama-era officials manufactured and politicized intelligence to create the Russia collusion narrative in 2016. Intelligence that those officials have said they had great confidence in.
John Brennan and Jim Comey and I are part of the group that were tasked by President Obama to put together all the reporting we had on the Russian interference.
We're tasked by President Obama. You heard it here. You can tell the entire planet. H.A. Goodman is telling you President Obama is not going to allow Brennan and Clapper and Comey and Clinton to blame him, even though he was president. He very likely was just, taking one for the team or playing, helping the team, the Democratic Party team, in the last 2-3 months of his presidency. But that tarnished his presidency. That has tarnished his legacy. And in a court of law, Clapper's going to blame him. I'm telling you, if you're part of world history, okay. If you're part of world history like President Obama and President Trump, you're greater friends with each other than Obama and Clapper or Brennan or Comey or Clinton. Do you think that President Obama is closer to Hillary Clinton or closer to Donald Trump? Obviously closer to Trump. But I'm telling you right here, you just heard it right here. He's going to blame Obama. They all are in a court of law. So President Obama he circumvents criminal liability. Check it out again.
Confidence in.
John Brennan and Jim Comey and I are part of the group that were tasked by President Obama to put together all the reporting we had on the Russian interference, and which we did. And then, of course, on January 6th, we issued our intelligence community assessment documenting the Russian interference, in which we had very high confidence in the evidence that we presented.
You heard Clapper. We were tasked by President Obama, meaning in a court of law when he's deposed, let's say before Congress, testifies before Congress, or he's going to be indicted too. But on the witness stand, he's going to be asked, well, why did you do all of this? Why did you set up and frame Trump? Well, we were tasked by, it was President Obama's fault. We were tasked by him. They're blaming Obama already. They were blaming, well, this is years back. They were already blaming Obama. So he circumvents, President Obama circumvents criminal liability. I'm telling you.
Gabbard also teeing up that there will be more declassified documents coming this week. Ahead of that, here's what we've learned so far. December 7th, 2016, the assessment reiterated that Russia did not tamper with election infrastructure. Just one day later, the editor of that assessment canceled the brief, quote, based on new guidance. By December 9th, 2016, Obama convened National Security Council principals and ordered a new assessment. And on January 6, 2017, the new unclassified assessment was released. Obama's office today firing back, issuing the following statement. Out of respect for the office of the presidency, our office does not normally dignify the constant nonsense and misinformation flowing out of this White House with a response. But these claims are outrageous enough to merit one. These bizarre allegations are ridiculous and a weak attempt at distraction. Nothing in the document issued last week.
What do you expect him to say? Okay, Donald, I'm going to help you. And then, what do you expect him to say? Of course, I know people think I'm nuts, but I'm telling you, that's how all these indictments will lead to trials and convictions. Okay, because John Ratcliffe stated they have all the evidence, but they had to look for it. They hid or destroyed so much evidence. But guess who knows where all the evidence is? President Obama.
Undercuts the widely accepted conclusion that Russia worked to influence the 2016 presidential election but did not successfully manipulate any votes. These findings were affirmed in a 2020 report by the bipartisan Senate Intelligence Committee led by then Chairman Marco Rubio. Joining me now to react is the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard. Director Gabbard, give me your response to what we heard from former President Obama there. He's saying that none of this makes any sense, that this is a distraction. What do you say to that?
It's the art of deflection coming from former President Obama, as well as his friends who are still in Congress today, and Senator Warner and Congressman Jim Himes, really all basically saying that exact same statement, which doesn't actually address the issue that was revealed in great detail in the over 100 documents that we released last week, in the documents that we will be releasing later this week, that point to the undeniable fact that you laid out in your introduction to this segment, is that the intelligence community had one assessment, that Russia did not have the intent or capability to try to impact the outcome of the U.S. election leading up to Election Day. The same assessment was made after Donald Trump was elected by the American people as president in 2016, defeating Hillary Clinton. And it wasn't until after that pulled President's Daily Brief document that you referenced that the Principals Committee was called in the National Security Council. And President Obama then directed Obama's DNI James Clapper to lead the effort to create this new intelligence community assessment that detailed not if, but how Moscow attempted to influence the outcome of the U.S. election. So this is the thing that I think people should pay attention to, is neither the message from President Obama's office, neither the statements coming from Democrats in Congress today and their friends in the propaganda media. None of them are addressing this fact that there was a shift, a 180-degree shift from the intelligence community's assessment leading up to the election to the one that President Obama directed be produced after Donald Trump won the election, that completely contradicted those assessments that had come previously. The second thing I want to address that's very important, Laura, is that you in the clip that you played, you saw John Brennan, James Clapper, James Comey stated with high confidence this January intelligence community assessment that they drafted at the direction of President Obama. The fact is that they used already discredited information like the Steele dossier. They knew it was discredited at that time, yet they used it as a source for this document that they claim to have high confidence in. They used intelligence that some of these intelligence community professionals rejected previously because of the lack of credibility and the lack of the ability to vet with any kind of confidence whether or not that information or intelligence was accurate and could be used for an assessment. There's a long laundry list of facts and intelligence reporting that directly contradict the statement coming from President Obama's office and those who are trying to deflect away from what actually happened, which was after Donald Trump was elected, led by President Obama, there was an effort to create a document that would serve as a foundation for what would be a years-long coup against President Trump, therefore trying to subvert the will of the American people who sent him to the White House in 2016.
Well, it's amazing that you are now releasing all of this. And Tulsi, I have to tell you, for those of us who lived through it, thank you. I think it's great that we're getting this information out. You say there.
And that's not all the information. They're going to get a lot more. They're going to declassify a lot more documents. The past 10 years, in many ways, was a waste of U.S. history, at least in terms of modern domestic politics. It was just a waste in many ways. The Democrats, what they did is they don't have functioning primaries. We learned that from their own writing. Then they blamed Russia because every single scandal from from Bernie Sanders being cheated, Hunter's laptop, everything is a Russian disinformation campaign. But Russia's not afraid of the Democratic Party. That's why they invaded under Biden. And Clinton wanted to elevate President Trump. It's within her own campaign emails. Her staff wanted to elevate Trump. So the whole thing was deflection. They lost. They couldn't accept losing, so they blamed Russia. Then they had more scandal after scandal, but they had social media algorithms. They had Twitter's trust and safety team should get like some kind of award from the Democratic Party. So should Jimmy Kimmel. I mean, they were working in overdrive. They had every single media and social media advantage. Trump was kicked off social media platforms. I mean, they did everything possible. The FBI worked with Twitter before Elon Musk bought it to ban and to suspend and shadow ban conservative and delete accounts of tens of thousands of conservatives. And so, but they still lost. They had the CIA chief. They had everything. The FBI. They indicted a bunch of people, tried to ruin their lives. There was an attempt on Trump's life. And a firefighter lost his life defending his family. They never imagined. They wasted so much power and influence. Had they simply allowed President Trump to be a president, they would have a functioning political party. They might not even get the House now. This is the lowest I've seen any political party, Republican or even Bush, who destroyed the Republicans in 2008 or 2007 with endless wars and then the stock market collapse. Even then, that political party was still functioning. But with the Democrats, they're like done politically.
Is more information. There are more documents to be released. Anything you can tell us on that?
We will be releasing these documents shortly in the wake of the release that we did last week. I'm very encouraged by the fact that we have whistleblowers coming forward who are intelligence community professionals who were there when this happened and who were disgusted by it and are heartened at the possibility and the hope that the truth will see the light of day. And of course, the most important thing is that the American people see accountability, which is why we're referring and have already sent all of the documents that we have currently and any others that we get in the future to the Department of Justice to bring about that accountability, to ensure that the integrity of our democratic republic exists, that the American people can have faith and trust that who they vote for in our elections to be elected will actually be respected by those who are leaving power.
The Democrats never treated Trump as a president. They never allowed him to be president. And it didn't work. Like the ladies at The View and Stephen Colbert and Jimmy Kimmel and Twitter's trust and safety team, what did they do to stop Trump? They only made him more powerful. When you tell anyone When you tell an American you can't listen to that, they're going to want to listen to it. If you're judgmental and condemn everything, and you think you're high and mighty and you're sanctimonious and you're self-righteous every 2 seconds, people are going to say, you know what? Let's look at your dirty laundry. Don't throw stones if you live in a glass house. Felt like George W. Bush there. Fool me once, shame on you, shame on me. I was like, well, almost didn't know the proverb, but let's continue.
Collusion and conspiracy at the highest levels against President Trump. Now, Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard revealing what this audience has known all along. A cabal of high-ranking officials led by then-President Barack Obama, CIA Director John Brennan, and Hillary Clinton, among others, took the world on a wild goose chase to try and take down their political enemy, Donald Trump, no matter the casualties along the way. DNA Tulsi Gabbard is now calling for prosecutions, revealing declassified documents from the Russia collusion made-up investigation, which she says detail a treasonous conspiracy by officials at the highest level of the Obama White House to stop incoming President Donald Trump. The cabal included Barack Obama, John Brennan, James Clapper, Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, Jim Comey, and Susan Rice, who pushed a made-up story that President Trump colluded with Russia to win the 2016 election, so the cabal would not lose their grip on power. All of this exactly as then Intelligence Committee Chairman Devin Nunes, Judiciary Committee member John Ratcliffe, and President Trump himself told us so many times from day one.
Tacos? It's the original intelligence, the original reasons that the counterintelligence investigation was started. Now, this is really important to us because a counterintelligence investigation uses the tools of our intelligence services that are not supposed to be used on American citizens. So we've long wanted to know, well, what intelligence did you have that actually led to this investigation? So what we found now, after the investigators have reviewed it, is that, in fact, there was no intelligence.
As a former federal prosecutor, my opinion is that declassifying them would not expose any national security information, would not expose any sources and methods. It would expose certain folks at the Obama Justice Department and FBI and their actions taken to conceal material facts from the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court.
How involved was John Brennan?
Totally involved. He was totally involved. John Brennan was one of the architects, in my opinion. You look at Brennan, you look at Clapper, you look at them all. But ultimately, the president knew everything. The president knew everything. President Obama and Vice President Biden, they knew everything.
And Comey and Brennan and Clapper, they all were terrible, and they lied to.
Imagine if you've watched this channel for a while and hit subscribe if you're new. You know how passionate I am. You know how passionate I've been the past 8, 9, really 10 years. Multiply that interest level times 20,000. You'll get half of how interested or passionate President Trump is. You think that you can do that to somebody like President Trump? And then he's going to do what Bernie Sanders did. Oh, thank you, Debbie, for treating me so nicely. Kicking me to the curb. Well, that was taking one for the team. Yes, thank you. It was a wonderful thing you did to my movement in 2016, which is now a bowel movement. But what can I tell you? You cheated me, but I certainly won't thank anyone involved in pointing out that I was cheated by the Democrats. I'll just go ahead and say that Trump is the worst president of all time, even though he was elected twice, won every swing state, won the popular vote. But yeah.
Congress, they spied on my campaign, which is treason. They spied both before and after I won.
Joining me now is the woman herself, the director of.
By the way, they were going to write a Bernard Sanders dossier. It was about Bernard Sanders and a bunch of potpourri in a Moscow hotel room and Lord knows what else. Hit subscribe if you're new.
Of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard. Director, thanks very much for being here this morning.
Good morning, Maria. Thank you.
What was the most damning thing that you learned after looking through all of these declassified documents?
Maria, the implications of this are frankly nothing short of historic. Over 100 documents that we released on Friday really detail and provide evidence of how this treasonous conspiracy was directed by President Obama just weeks before he was due to leave office, after President Trump had already gotten elected. This is not a Democrat or Republican issue. This is an issue that is so serious it should concern every single American, because it has to do with the integrity of our democratic republic. What we saw occur here, as the documents we released detailed, was that we had a sitting president of the United States and his cabinet and leadership team, quite frankly, who were not happy with the fact that President Trump had won the election, that the American people had chosen Donald J. Trump to be the next president, commander-in-chief of the United States. And so they decided that they would do everything possible to try to undermine his ability to do what voters tasked President Trump to do. So creating this piece of manufactured intelligence that claims that Russia had helped Donald Trump get elected contradicted every other assessment that had been made previously in the months leading up to the election that said exactly the opposite, that Russia had neither the intent nor the capability to try to, quote unquote, hack the United States election for the presidency of the United States. So the effect of what President Obama and his senior national security team did was subvert the will of the American people, undermining our democratic republic, and enacting what would be essentially a years-long coup against President Trump, who was duly elected by the American people.
Yeah. Now, I want to go back to something Devin Nunes said, which is exactly what you're saying right now. And he said, after all of our investigation, we found that there was no intelligence. There was no intelligence actually indicating that Trump colluded with Russia. And what happened? Because there was a presidential daily briefing that was presented to President Obama every day. And every day it said the same thing. We have no evidence of collusion. We have no evidence that Russia did this with Donald Trump. So what happened? How did they actually get the public to believe, and half the public believed, that actually Trump did collude?
Well, this is the thing, Maria, when you look at the assessments that were made, not just by one element of the intelligence community, but in my role as the Director of National Intelligence, I oversee 18 different intelligence community elements. And in the months leading up to the November 2016 election, the intelligence community agreed that there was no intelligence that reflected that Russia was trying to hack the election in favor of either candidate. The evidence showed, the intelligence showed that, again, Russia did not have either the intent nor the capability to be able to impact the outcome of the United States election. So it was very striking when we look back again at the documents that I declassified and released that shows there was a shift. In early December, the first week of December, again, another document was produced by the intelligence community, a president's daily brief that was consistent with every other assessment that was done previously leading up to the election. Russia did not, this is after the election now, did not attempt to affect the outcome of the American election.
And Hillary Clinton, her campaign literally wanted Trump. And I talk about the Democrats and all that. There are a lot of really wonderful, beautiful human beings who are liberal Democrats. A lot, there are great human beings who are Democrats and Republicans. It really doesn't matter. Politics to me is not important as who you are as a person. But they're not nearly as important. But the modern Democratic Party tries to merge everything together. But anyway, there are wonderful people who believe nonsense. There are intelligent people who had to justify the indefensible, because even really intelligent people, when they can't accept reality, when they can't deal with cognitive dissonance, have to blame Russia for Hillary Clinton losing. not top secret intelligence on servers hacked by the world, not cheating Bernie Sanders, not a brand that people were tired of. The American public, the electorate, is tired of Democrats. They're tired of the apoplectic, judgmental condemnation every 2 seconds. The modern Democratic Party is like the 80s televangelists, except they're atheist. It's like a atheistic political cult where friends will disown other friends. Not all friends, but there are people, good people, wonderful people, who will disown friends. Oh, you voted for Trump. Oh, you're a right-wing person. Like, that never happened in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, even during President Obama's administration. It never happened. Once 2016 hit, the Jacob Javits Center, they're crying. Oh, they couldn't stand losing. So you had a lot of beautiful people believing nonsense.
That was never published. Hours before it would have gone into President Obama's President's Daily Brief, it was pulled by a senior level intelligence official saying that they had to pull it because they had received new guidance. The very next day, this meeting was called, a National Security Council meeting, bring together all of the senior leaders of President Obama's cabinet, and the topic that was put forward was a sensitive matter. The tasks that came out of that meeting was coming from President Obama directing the intelligence community, then Obama's ODNI director Clapper, to produce a document, to produce an intelligence assessment that detailed not if, but how Moscow affected the outcome of the election that had already occurred, electing Donald Trump to the presidency. This document that they published in January of 2017 was the foundational groundwork that they continued to reference over and over and over again to enact this years-long coup against President Trump.
Now, I know that Devin Nunes came out with the Nunes report and a lot of other reports after that to indicate everything that you're saying. And I guess the worst of the reports, the real evidence, is the reports of most recent, right? The last reports are the worst reports that we're going to see. And I understand that there is more, perhaps, that you are going to come out with next week. And I was told that that's why they raided Mar-a-Lago, that they wanted to find the Trump-Russia documents that indicated there was absolutely no collusion and that there was no evidence to even start such an investigation. But Trump didn't have it there in Mar-a-Lago, but that's why they raided his house in 2022. Is that correct?
I don't have the details on the specifics of the Mar-a-Lago raid itself. Those are within the possession of the FBI. But there's no question in my mind that this intelligence community assessment that President Obama ordered published, which contained a manufactured intelligence document. It's worse than even politicization of intelligence. It was manufactured intelligence that sought to achieve President Obama and his team's objective, which was undermining President Trump's presidency and subverting the will of the American people. So yes, next week we will be releasing more detailed information about how exactly this took place and the extent to which this information was sought to be hidden from the American people, hidden from officials who would be in a position to do something about it. And that's really the point here that I think is most important, Maria, and you said it in your opening. Accountability is essential for the future of our country, for the American people to have any sense of trust in the integrity of our democratic republic. Accountability, action, prosecution, indictments for those who are responsible for trying to steal our democracy is essential for us to make sure that this never happens to our country again.
There will be an indictment, major indictment every month. There'll be talk of indictments probably every week, every 2 weeks. You have to hit subscribe. Well, you don't have to, but please hit subscribe to this channel. If you're new, you could read my writing on hagoodman.com. I've been talking about this for years and years and years. If you've been with me for, 3, 4, 5, 6 years, I've been telling you, ladies and gentlemen. By the way, the Bolton indictment, well, we'll get to Bolton in a second. Steele dossier here's Jim Jordan talking about it, and it's going to be one of the reasons that a whole lot of people, the Steele dossier was a criminal act. Again, Bernie Madoff, he bought and sold stocks and shorted and options, shorted companies, whatever. It was a Ponzi scheme. He had accounts open for people. Everything he did was legally in terms of, the different transactions. But it was criminal because it was a Ponzi scheme. Same thing with Comey and Brennan and Clapper and Hillary Clinton. They purchased a dossier legally. They FISA warrants, well, somewhat legally. But the conspiracy was criminal in nature. It was like a Ponzi scheme for politics.
For bad faith, deep state actors continue. Earlier today, the House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jim Jordan referred former CIA Director John Brennan to the DOJ for prosecution.
DM, thank you so very much to my super chat. Greatly, greatly, greatly appreciated. Your support is so greatly appreciated. DM, thank you so much. Thank you.
Over allegations that he made false statements to Congress about his role in the Russia collusion hoax. In his letter, Jordan said, in part, quote, making false statements before Congress is a crime that undermines the integrity of the committee's constitutional duty to conduct oversight. Anyway, House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jim Jordan is with us with more. I've read your letter to Pam Bondi. It is a powerful prima facie case. He directly lied to Congress numerous times, and you believe you have the evidence.
Yeah, you're not supposed to lie, Sean, but you're definitely not supposed to lie when you're under oath talking to Congress. And that's exactly what it looks like John Brennan did. He said he wasn't involved with the dossier at all. He said that to us under oath. He said he didn't want it included in the intelligence community assessment, the report that's put together. But then ODNI Director Tulsi Gabbard declassified a report that said just the opposite. In fact, John Brennan put in writing that he felt the dossier should be included in the report. And more importantly, when he was confronted by an individual who works at the CIA, and the individual said, Mr. Brennan, this dossier just doesn't hold up. There's not the underlying intelligence to support it. And Brennan's response was, yeah, but doesn't it ring true? Showing his true color, showing that he was out to get President Trump. So we think he lied. We think it's clear. And I'll be, Sean, I don't do a lot of these. I've done very few referrals. You got to have the evidence to do this. We think it's there. We think it is clear. We appreciate what Tulsi released and declassified that report. And that's why we sent it to the Justice Department. And we'll see what the Attorney General Bondi and Deputy Attorney General Blanche do with it now.
They rejected the first intel assessment. Senior career intel officials at the CIA concluded there was no Trump-Russia collusion after the 2016 election. The declassified documents say Obama himself ordered it. And didn't they include, and didn't Brennan know, and wasn't he a part of the meeting that took place about a new intelligence assessment in this case?
Yeah. They changed the report between Election Day 2016, Inauguration Day in January 2017. They changed it in December, and they changed it to say something that wasn't supported by the intelligence. And then, to make matters worse, they go up to Trump Tower on January 6, 2017, and brief the president on the dossier that they know is garbage.
That was called a shakedown. They wanted to intimidate President Trump. They imagine if Republicans went to an incoming Democratic president and said, hey, we have a dossier on you. Oh, by the way, Trump and Giuliani and the Republican National Committee purchased the dossier. Can you imagine if you don't ever debate a wonderful, morally superior Democrat, but if a Democrat had to if the Democratic Party was treated by President Trump in the manner that he was treated by them, they would never stand for it. Could you imagine Trump purchasing a dossier on Harris or Hillary or Biden? Well, you wouldn't need a dossier, you just would need that laptop. But could you imagine? They would say, oh my God, it's literally purchased by the Republicans, and the Republicans filtered through government, and it's like unbelievable. But all the receipts are coming out, ladies and gentlemen. All the receipts are coming out. And it's all going to lead to Madam Secretary. So Clinton will get indicted. John Brennan, it could be next week, could be the week after. Okay, when there was talk of Comey getting indicted, he got indicted 2 weeks later. Same with Letitia James, 2-3 weeks later. So Brennan will probably get indicted early November. A little nice Thanksgiving present before Thanksgiving. Anyway, hit subscribe to this channel. God bless you all. You can't set up and frame innocent people. That's not allowed. It's actually a crime to do so. And there was never any evidence ever that Trump worked with Russia. Everything was a complete hoax. And that's why John Ratcliffe is stating that Clinton and others are going to get indicted. And so the indictment is basically already written. But anyway, hit subscribe to this channel. John Brennan, indictment imminent. And they're all going to blame Clinton. And she's going to blame them. And President Obama is going to show President Trump the receipts. Hit subscribe to this channel. I'll see you tomorrow. We'll have 2 live streams.